So tonight's webinar is Strategy Behind Law School Applications. A little bit of an agenda. So we'll be discussing different application components, law school application deadlines, your essential law school application checklist and sort of what that entails, tips for maximizing your chances of acceptance, and of course, a Q&A. So before we begin and I send it over to our panelist, Jessie, just a couple of housekeeping rules, if you would. First and foremost, this webinar is recorded and you will receive a recording within the next couple of days. We encourage you to rewatch it. We encourage you to share it with your network and anyone else you may find would love to know this information. As well as we're looking at running this webinar for about 45 minutes, we will have, as you can see from the agenda, a Q&A component. So whether you save your questions until the end or you drop a question in the chat or the Q&A only box, we'll get to them. We will try and get to them as many as possible. And of course, because of time, we might not be able to get to everyone's questions. Should that happen, we definitely encourage you to book a free consultation where you're able to sit down with one of us from the Juris education team to be able to thoroughly go over that question for you. So before I pass it on to Jessie, unfortunately, Miko was not able to make it tonight. But before I pass it over to Jessie, maybe, Jessie, if you don't mind, I'd love to do a little bit of an intro to who we are. So not everybody on this call will know who we are. We're Juris Education. We are an admissions consulting firm with extensive experience helping students, candidates get accepted to their dream law schools with scholarships. We extensively focus on JD and LLM programs, pre-law advising, of course, to ensure you have the tools you need to succeed. Our law school admissions experts help you craft perfect law school applications, prepare you for the LSAT, GRE, bar exam, MPRE, and much more. Our superstar team, Jessie's one of our superstars, former admissions officers, law professionals, and other accomplished, passionate, and of course, intelligent professionals would love to hear more about your career goals. We encourage you to pull up your phones and scan this QR code that you see on screen. It'll take you to a little bit of a consultation. It will take you to a consultation page where we'll be able to learn a little bit about you, and you'll be able to sit down with one of our amazing professionals to talk about what your goals are. USC is my dream school. Awesome. Okay. Jessie, with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to you to lead tonight's webinar.
Thank you so much. It was such a nice intro. Hi, everyone. My name's Jessie. So a bit of background about me. I completed my undergraduate education at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, where I studied business administration. I then went on to get my JD MBA from USC. And throughout those, I guess, because it was a 4-year JD MBA program and 4-year undergrad. So throughout those 8 years, I was actually a writing center consultant, helping people draft their admissions essays, helping them formulate and streamline their resumes, coming up with ideas for interviews and questions to ask and the like. At both Emory and USC, and I've assisted a lot of my classmates in getting into law school. So I do have extensive experience with that, and Juris, I think, is one of the top-notch programs that has a demonstrated success rate in getting people into the schools they want. Just look at our website, look at the statistics, and look at the percentage of people who clients are that get into those top schools. And get those top-notch LSAT scores. And that's just evidence of course, how hardworking our students are, but also how effective this program really is. So I'm really glad you all are here, and I'm so excited to get started with today's webinar. So let's start off with the different application components. First off, obviously you need an undergraduate degree. You're not gonna go to law school with that one. The first is a baccalaureate degree. You're not required to take any specific course prerequisites, and that's, I can speak from my own experience in that I went into college thinking I'll be like pre-med, took Bio 101. I got like a B+. I didn't think it was for me, so I switched to business. I didn't decide I wanted to go to law school really until my last semester of undergrad when I was in the business program. And there was a course called business law, and it was taught by this professor named Professor Burdett. And I actually loved that class so much. I didn't do well in that class. I did okay. I got like a B+. It wasn't like one of my best classes, but that was the decision I made to go to law school was after that one course that I took during my senior year of college. And so that's just evidence of the fact that there are people who, do pre-law, and that's great. I think it's, awesome if you're in a pre-law society, but just know that it's not necessary. And in fact, it may be of benefit to you to come from a more diverse background in terms of your educational background. Like say you got an engineering degree. Law schools love that. If you got a math degree, if you do a STEM major, you're probably more likely to do well in law because it's such a mechanical application of the rules and principles to whatever. You'll learn in law school like issue spotting and techniques like that. That's what the exams are based off of, and it's a mechanical application of the law to a set of facts. So if you do like a more STEM related major, you're actually more likely to succeed in law school than if you were like in English or journalism or even a business major for that matter. But that's like a generalization, obviously, but just food for thought, GPA requirements. Wide range of GPAs are accepted across law schools. It could be low at 2.95 or as high as 4.0 for top ranking schools. That said, I will say, and you guys should check out this book. I think it's called Getting Maybe, where it really discusses kind of the inner machinations of what goes into the admissions committee's processes. Well, it's obviously changed a lot throughout the years. There's still elements of it that stay the same. So for example, 4.0 at a less competitive school is not going to be the equivalent of like, a 4.0 at like Harvard, let's say, for undergrad. It's all relative. A 4.0 in English or a 2.9, for example, in biomedical engineering as that major is not necessarily going to be like, oh, no, you're automatically rejected. No, that's a very, very academically rigorous major. And so admissions committees will look into that. They'll look into the rigor of your academic program, like the ranking of your undergraduate institution, and they'll look in your GPA in the context of what major you had. And if your major is super difficult and has like if you're a chemistry major and you have like a 3.1, hey, that's pretty good actually. And if you are a chemistry major at like, an Ivy League school, that's also pretty good. So don't sell yourself short if your GPA isn't as high as you think it is. Think about it in the context of everything that you've done. Then CAS, LSACCS has its own GPA system. It's like, from what I recall, I don't think it was like a significant difference, although it will be a new calculation, and Juris has that. So check out our website and do that calculation yourself on there. But that's just something to also keep in mind. There's a separate GPA calculator that CAS does to kind of make everything sort of on the same playing field. Excuse me, because some schools have different scaling systems than others. Oh, the book title is called Getting to Maybe. Getting to Maybe. Admission tests. LSAT or GRE are required for law school. However, please remember that not all law schools accept the GRE. And then here's some scores you should aim for when you take the LSAT or GRE. So if you're taking the LSAT, a minimum of 150 for any accredited university, 160 or higher for top 25, 170 or higher for top 10. Definitely, it's accurate. Keep that in mind. But then again, if you didn't get those scores, take it again and take it again and again until you can, until you get a score that you want. I mean, I think there's a limit to how many you're able to take within like a 5-year span, so look into that. So don't like go absolutely crazy. Like if you take it like twice and within a year and you still aren't there, maybe just take some time to study some more. We have excellent tutors at Juris, so check us out for those services. But don't be discouraged by a low LSAT score. You can always redeem yourself. I think I got like a 150 something my first LSAT, and then I got a 166 the second time, which is like, and people were like saying, oh, you're never going to get more than a 2-point difference in your LSAT. The first LSAT score you get is like set in stone. Like I got that kind of advice from from people that I actually thought were like reputable, and I just absolutely think that that's ridiculous. Like you can definitely increase your score significantly if you just are persistent and you study and you do it and you take your time with it. You'll be great. GRE, only 70 schools accept the GRE. It tests knowledge of math concepts, ability to work. I took the GRE as well, but I took that to get into the MBA program. So I can attest that there's definitely more math to it. I will say the LSAT's changed or will be changing soon in that I believe they're taking out the logic game section. So keep in mind that there are different adjustments to the LSAT coming in the new as the year progresses, and the GRE is going to have some math, so be aware of that. And if you're great at that, check it out, but make sure that the school you apply to accepts it. And if they do accept it, if they do accept either, believe them in that they don't have a preference for either. Just follow the instruction. If they don't, definitely just take the LSAT. So the LSAT, as we said, it's challenging. I definitely is very. I would say it's like a very. It is a very, obviously it's like a logic-driven test. It's very, like I said before, the law is a very mechanical application of. It's like my professor used to say, it's like math with words, and I think the LSAT kind of encapsulates that to an extent. It's not like bar exam that the LSAT is really about. It's not about how much you memorize. It's about how you play the game almost. It's like literally one of the sections is logic games. Like you need to know how these rules work and how they apply in different contexts. But you don't have to memorize anything because it's not like it's not like a I would say like an information-based exam. It's like or a knowledge-based exam. It's more of like a skill or it's a logic test. So there are definitely a lot of strategies. I can go on and on. I used Kaplan, I think, for the LSAT. I did use the LSAT Bibles. I thought those were kind of hard. So I think Kaplan really kind of helped even it out a little bit. But whatever you do, stick with it. Whatever type of prep you do, stick with it. And be consistent, like every day. It's not something you can just kind of pick up and do. You have to just practice every day and gradually get, and don't be afraid to take practice tests all the way through. And I would say in the beginning, don't time yourself, just like get through it and see how accurate you can be. And then as you get closer and closer to the deadline of the test, take time tests in a setting and really like pretend like you're taking the actual thing and get used to that. GRE, you don't have to take the GRE if you took the LSAT, and you can choose to write either the LSAT or GRE when applying to schools that allow this option. So there's 70 schools, so just know that it's limited in scope of how applicable the GRE is. But there are a lot of top-ranking schools that accept it. As you say here, Yale and Harvard are part of that list. So you can still apply with the GRE instead of the LSAT. Just be sure to ask questions, like look at the website, as that's the easiest way to see if they accept it, and be mindful of that. LSAT's accepted everywhere, so if you really want to be safe, just take the LSAT. But again, some people may find the GRE easier because there's a math component, and if you're really good at math, then that's good too. Resume. Your resume should be 1 to 2 pages typed and include the following: personal biographical information, education, work experience, extracurricular activities. Also, honors, research, and skills are some things to consider. I completely agree with this, and I could go on and on in depth about what makes a compelling resume. So I'll just give you kind of a rundown of what I think a resume needs to include. Definitely, of course, structure-wise, you can look at templates online. Don't make it too flashy. You're not applying for like a marketing or like a degree in something creative. This is law school. That said, you can make your name at the top like blue or something just to highlight it, but everything should also just be like black and white. Times New Roman, 12-point font or 11, and make sure that the margins are clean and you're filling out all the white space. These are like little nitpicky things, but when you look at someone's resume, these are things that you're gonna like. immediately see, oh, this person's organized or this person's sloppy. This person made a mistake here. Like, this is your first impressions, and it's a rundown of like who you are. So you want to make sure that it's like spotless. In terms of the substance of resumes, I would say it's important to start with an action verb, and make sure that you're not sounding like a taskmaster. That's something my boss now tells me as well. It's like, you're not just attending meetings, you're not just taking notes, you're engaging, you're analyzing, you are spearheading, you're leading, you're doing things that require some kind of critical thinking skills, even if they don't make it sound that way, because at the end of the day, they don't want someone who's just going to merely show up. Showing up is obviously important. It's like a huge significant percentage of success is just about showing up, sure. But when you write a resume, you want to extend past that. So start with like an action verb that hones in on critical thinking skills. You engaged with clients, you streamlined this, you led to this type of success rate. And where applicable, add numbers. You added X number of followers on social media through your social media marketing strategy. You increase sales by X%. Make sure you have a quantifiable number if applicable, and be sure to hone in on that when you can, because those details matter and people will be able to see, oh, this person really made a difference at this work experience or at this thing. And if you don't have professional work experience, like I had limited work experience in undergrad because I had a lot of extracurriculars. And of course I had a summer internship, but besides that, it's like hard to say. So sometimes if you are, say, like an RA or a teaching assistant, I would put that under work experience, not extracurricular, because that is professional. And I think that's something you can definitely add. Honors and awards. If you're a merit scholarship recipient, if you've won an award, if you've published anything, and even if you think it's irrelevant to law, like I wrote my honors thesis on something about Chinese history. It was the Jesuit missionary Alfonso Vagnone and his impact on Ming Dynasty China. Like that has nothing to do with law. It's just something I was interested in, and I wrote it and I published it. And I think that that's, evidence of something that they want to see someone who's curious. And they want to see someone who is willing to learn more and is wanting to dive deep and gain that kind of subject matter expertise in perhaps an area of law. They don't want someone who is kind of just like going through the motions and doing the bare minimum. They want someone who, so if you publish something, if you do a thesis, super important, and I think super helpful to put it on there. You don't have one, that's also not going to like make or break your application, but I'm just saying if you have it and you think even if you think it's irrelevant, just include it. And affinity groups are also great. Leadership opportunities are great too. So yeah. Like I said, don't omit experiences not related to law, because at the end of the day, as we said before, there is no standard like required pre-law track. You can take all business courses or all history or science or math. Like they want people with diverse educational backgrounds. They don't want everyone to be poli-sci majors. If you're a poli-sci major, don't think that rules you out. Of course, if you're a poli-sci major, that's naturally you're going to apply to law school and that's going to help. But if you're not a poli-sci major, also don't think that that's anything to rule you out of the picture. That's definitely something that might actually add to your portfolio and your candidacy. So there are particular instructions for each school. Yeah. And just be mindful about editing. Like that's like one of the biggest things about being an attorney, I think, is that you really need to, it's like some of the biggest things, like there are people, in the legal field who will really get on your case about having a typo or including something that in a template that you should have omitted, or like signing off or addressing it to the wrong name. These are like clerical issues that happen. Everyone's human, but that's also like I've realized now that I'm still a young attorney, but in the couple of years that I've been practicing, I would say that it's like a significant portion of the legal practice is literally just like reading things out loud after you've typed them and making sure that it sounds coherent and right. And I'm someone who loves to like get things done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So I'm guilty of like not double, triple checking things, but it's something I've learned to do because it's just like it's worth your while to double check to make sure you don't have typos or things like that, because this is a field really values sort of like, it's not like superficial, but I would say that it's definitely, appearances matter, and a part of appearances in the legal profession is not having typos. Letters of recommendation. So law schools require you to submit letters of recommendation from people who can attest to your character. Same thing for the bar. They should be extraordinary, personal, and compelling. Like, you don't want to, even if you did really well in a class, you don't want someone who, like a teacher who taught like 500 students at the same time, who never saw you in class, but say you did really well, you got like an A. They're not going to be able to attest to your character because they don't really know you. That's on the contrary. By contrast, for example, in my own experience, I didn't get an A in business law. I got a B, and I still got a really good letter of recommendation because that professor saw in me that I was interested in material, that I was creative with my study habits. I met with her during office hours, and I actually did it during like a summer semester. So I like did the entire course in like a condensed version of it, which was like really rigorous because it was like, I think it was like 3-hour classes every day in the evenings. But she really got to know me because of that. And it was a smaller class, so it was more intimate, and she knew who I was and what I stood for and what I wanted to do with my life. And so she was able to speak to all those things. You also want to, you know, if it's been like a little bit since you got that class or you took that class, I would probably meet with them or maybe draft like an email or something, just explaining to them or relaying to them, like refreshing their memory as to who you are and what you did and what stood out about the class to you, so they can remember. And if it's a teacher that isn't, you know, you'll know if it's a good teacher for a letter of recommendation if they remember who you are first and foremost, of course, but also if they recall the specific instances where you really demonstrated your extraordinary prowess, or you were really curious, or you did something innovative and creative that really made you stand out. They'll remember those things, and that's the teacher for you. If they don't, or if they don't even know your name, maybe that's not the best option for you. But use your own judgment. I think you'll know, and it doesn't have to be the class that you had an A+ in. So. Personal statement. This is sort of like my bread and butter. Like I, as a admissions coach for Juris, or that's like my biggest thing is personal statement and helping people come up with one. And the biggest thing is like a theme, right? You want to make sure that this is like your stamp of who you are, and like you were here and you did this on earth thus far. And so it's like a story in so many words, like, you know, 700 words, explaining who you are and why you want to go to law school. So here's a list of qualities that people in law school will look at. They want to look at passion. Write something about what you're passionate about, and you're most likely to be engaging to the admissions committee if you're more passionate about what you're talking about. Originality, structure, simplicity, care. Obviously, don't have any typos. I would say like passion and originality, I think, are like the most important things. Structure too, I'll get to that in a minute. But think about the overarching theme of what you've done so far, and in your academic career, in your personal life. So for example, for me, I am a child of immigrants. My parents immigrated here from China. I studied Chinese language and literature and business in undergrad. And so I decided that the theme of my application essay was to pursue immigration law and become an immigration lawyer, which I actually did for a little bit as a law clerk after law school. And I wove that into my essay by explaining to them, all the trials and tribulations I went through growing up in an East Asian American household, and how that my culture kind of affected my growth and the trajectory of my life, and how I want to be able to create opportunities for other people like myself who may not have been born in America, but who came from the country that my parents came from and wanted to achieve a better future in America. And so that's sort of what my personal statement was about. I'm not saying that that's necessarily what you're going to write about, but I would say whatever you do choose, it should match and be reflective of what you've done so far. So if you're like an English major and you come from I don't know, a background that has nothing to do with science or anything like that, and you say, oh, I want to practice space law or rocket ship law, it's that's cool and that's definitely original, but it's also not believable because there's nothing that indicates that you have there's no proof or demonstrated history of your interest in that area, unless there is, which is maybe that's an issue also that you want to point out to your admissions counselor when you speak to them, is how can we kind of bring to light your interest in rocket ship law. I'm just making that up, but you get my point, which is that you want to make sure that your passion is something you're, first of all, honestly passionate about, and is reflective of a demonstrated history in terms of your educational background and your personal life to help fortify that and make it believable. Because, and also note that whatever you do end up writing about is not necessarily what you're going to stick to. Like I said, I wanted to practice immigration law. I'm doing medical malpractice law now. It has nothing to do with immigration law, but no one's coming at me being like, no, you had to do immigration law because you wrote about that in your law school admissions essay. I'm not saying lie. I'm just saying you're not tethered to whatever it is you wrote about, because your interests will change over time. And at the end of the day, yeah, I did do immigration law for a couple of years, but that didn't end up being the thing that resonated most with me as I pursued other areas and learned more and more about what I did appreciate about the field. And so that's why I learned that litigation was the best area for me. So you just never know until you try. But when you write this essay, make it reflective of something that is believable and something that you're passionate about and is indicative of what you've done already, and how it might tie to an area of law that you will be interested in pursuing in the future. I believe I made a really long explanation, but you get my point, I think. Okay. Law school application deadlines, super important. So these are some of the deadlines. I have a funny story because Emory has this interesting thing where if you're in the business program, you do your first 2 years in the College of Arts and Sciences, and then you apply to be in the business program your sophomore year, and then you're admitted and you get a completely separate GPA and a different transcript basically from the business school, Wayzata. I didn't realize that this is not something that happens in every undergraduate institution. So LSAC had issues processing my application, and it was very, very late in the application process. As I said before, I decided at the last minute I wanted to go to law school, and so it was already December, and I was like, wait, why isn't this not being processed yet? What's going on? I called them and was like, well, you submitted in November or something, and it takes a long time, and there's errors because your transcript doesn't look right because there's two of them, and why are there two? And I'm like, I don't know why there's two. I didn't know that was an issue. Why didn't anyone tell me? So long story short, I should have submitted my transcript and application materials a lot earlier. Not necessarily my application, essays and stuff like that, but just the stuff that could already have been sent through, my transcript and stuff in LSAC that you can do before you even start applying to the specific individual schools. Having those uploaded, having those submitted for processing as soon as you can is important, and making sure that you don't miss the deadline, because if you miss the deadline, it's going to be really, really. It's always, that's one of the biggest things in the legal field too. Is if you can cure almost anything except for a statute of limitations expiration, or you missed a court appearance or a deadline. those are the things that you really can't remedy after the fact, but everything else you can definitely fix. So be timely and be early and get things into LSAC early, because as you know, they handle all the law school applications, and things can get lost or mixed up, and you want to account for that delay and make sure that if a delay does occur, that you still have time to fix it before the actual deadline. So things to keep in mind. Your essential law school application checklist. Research the application requirements. Create a spreadsheet. I love creating spreadsheets. I'm not great at spreadsheets, but Excel is great for simple things like this, like noting the deadlines, noting whose letter for recommendations you've already done and submitted to, and following up. Categorizing components, prioritizing tasks, breaking down your tasks. For optional materials, making sure that you look at the website and double and triple check if they have any supplemental essays and what they are. That's super important, because there's so many instances where I'm working with students and they give me a prompt that's a supplemental essay, and we draft the entire essay, and then I go and I'm like, wait, are you sure this was the prompt? And then I go on the website and realize it wasn't the right prompt. We have to redo it, the whole thing. So make sure that you know what the supplemental essays are and what the optional materials are required for each individual school. And of course, your personal statement is going to go to all the schools, but supplemental essays are tailored to the schools. So that said, your personal statement is going to go to all the schools, so don't say anything specific to the schools in your general personal statement. Only include that specific program or school name in your supplemental essay, if applicable. How long should the personal statement be? It should be, it depends on the school, but I would say it's around 750 words. But some schools have, well, actually personal statement is sent to all the schools. So I think it's around 750. But I would try to keep it to 2 pages, because you don't want it to be super, super long. And then, as I said before, for the supplemental essay, it's going to be, the word limit will vary. It can be 250 or it can be 500. It depends on the school. That's where I got the 500 word count from the supplemental essays. Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to just pop in here. So I just dropped a few links in the chat regarding personal statements. One of the links is how to write a law school personal statement, as well as examples. And then I shared an article we have where it's all about the actual length of the personal statement. I apologize that it's not, there's a comment that I left as well that is broken down into the top 5 law schools and how long their personal statements are. It's not, it looks a little cluttered on the actual chat, and I apologize. It doesn't let us change the format, but let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah, so this makes sense. It ranges Columbia Law's up to 3, Harvard's 2, Chicago's 2 to 4. I think 2 is like the maximum you really should be aiming for, unless you have like a very compelling reason to write more. Again, we're doing a lot of these applications, and you want to get to the point quickly. So, in a compelling way, obviously. So we'll help you with that, and we'll uniquely tailor the statement to your own personal goals and what you want to do and what you've done so far. But let me move on. Tips for maximizing your chance of success. Demonstrate leadership, definitely. They have, I would say that leadership is important. Extracurriculars are important as well. They want people who are involved. They want people who take initiative, who know how to direct people and create new things. If you're like a founder of a student organization or you're a class president, definitely things to add. If you don't have all these things, definitely won't break your application, but I would say add as much as you can onto your plate, but don't overfill your schedule and think that if you have a lot of extracurriculars, that'll make up for, like, a poor academic performance, for example. You have to balance everything. So make sure that you have those leadership experiences to the extent to which, so long as they don't interfere with your academic goals. Because at the end of the day, your GPA and your LSAT score are going to be like the most important factors. But again, extracurriculars are going to be important if you to kind of like add more substance to your application, and that will ultimately set you apart. But it won't help you as much if everything else in your application is like below average, if that makes sense. Work experience or internships, yeah, I would say, relevant work experience matter. Like, if you know you want to go to law school, start early. Like, be intern for a law firm, work as like a legal assistant or paralegal. Gain those substantive experiences, because that again shows your interest and your inclination towards the law. That said, I don't think that is necessarily a requirement. I didn't have any legal experience before going to law school. I had business experience. I was a marketing intern, and then I was a strategy consultant for a few companies as an undergraduate, but nothing in the legal field. And again, that kind of goes to what I was saying before about how they really value diverse experiences and things that aren't necessarily pigeonholed in a specific arena or area. But so if you can find relevant work experiences at a law firm or something like that, I think it's great. It's going to help you. If you can't, find a legal experience as like a summer intern or something like that. Find one in business. Find one at a chemistry lab, or be an RA. Like, these are things that, so long as you're getting substantive experience and that you're able to tailor that to how these skills can apply to a legal career, which you can almost do in any circumstance, you'll be fine. To the extent that you can find relevant work experiences, that's great. I think you should do that. But if you can't, again, don't rule yourself out. Find something that is meaningful to you and something that you can derive value and create some skills from and explain in your essays. Research and target law schools strategically. So definitely identify schools that align with your interests, look at their programs. So USC, for example, is really big on entertainment law, like next to Hollywood, so that's important. That's not necessarily why I applied to USC, and I didn't talk about that, but something to consider. I don't think USC actually has a supplemental essay. It could have changed since then, so I'd have to double check. But I would say that to the extent to which a school has a unique program or something that really resonates with you, definitely hone in on that. And if you interview with the school, definitely bring that up to show that you're interested and show that you have done your research. And tailor that to your application to highlight their unique offerings and how your skills can translate to that and why it's so important that you go to law school that sets them apart. Because, that's human nature. You want to feel special. Same thing with law schools. They also want to feel special, and they want to know that you are someone who's like really intent on going to the law school first and foremost, and who can actually make a difference once they do go, because they have an idea. You have an idea of what you would want to contribute when you get there. And the first thing that they look to, if you're someone that is inclined to contribute, is that if you've done your research and if you've been strategic about applying to the schools for their unique programs. Prepare for interviews and initial application components. So this is super important. A lot of the times, if you're in a really competitive application cycle, which is almost every case, especially now, things are getting more and more competitive, you're going to have interviews, and sometimes it could be group interviews. I think Georgetown Law had group interviews by year, but then I got into USC, so kind of like I didn't keep pursuing that. But nevertheless, if you really want to go to that school and they have that, always do it. Do the interview. Prepare thoroughly, make sure that you know everything on your personal statement, because all of those are fair game, obviously. In practice, we can help you with that. College, your counselors at Juris are here to help you. And the key really is, as it says here, articulating your motivations for pursuing legal education. So knowing how to translate your previous skills and your experiences and how they can sort of apply to like a legal context, I think that's the most important thing. And like I said before, it doesn't have to be like you were a legal intern or you were a legal assistant or a paralegal. It could be you were a teaching assistant or you volunteered for this organization. Like you learn interpersonal skills that could allow you to become a better advocate for your potential future clients in your legal practice. Things like that. There's always a way to translate things and we'll help you along with that. Again, make sure to pay attention to detail when completing your additional application requirements, such as writing samples or diversity statements. Present yourself in the best possible light in that regard as well. So make sure that you know all of your materials of your application before your interview. And if there's additional application components, make sure you submit all of those. If anything's optional, that means you got to do it. Like it's optional means mandatory, like if applicable. If not, I don't think there's ever going to be a case where there's an optional essay and it's not applicable to you. It's almost always going to be the case that you would be better off if you responded to it in a substantive and meaningful way, obviously, but just go the extra mile when you apply because it is competitive. All right. So I think that is.
Thank you very much. This has been incredible. I think every time we do these, I learn something new. I really, really do. So we have a ton of questions, and I'd love to just dive right in, Jesse. Mm-hmm. This one, I think you'll definitely be able to speak to. Do you need to take the GRE in addition to the LSAT to do a dual JD MBA program?
Not necessarily. For USC, it was funny because I took the GRE and then they waived it because of COVID. So there was like a specific, I took it and I didn't have to apparently. But some schools, some MBA programs do not require the GRE. Sometimes they require the GMAT. So I would look at the specific program. In no case would the MBA program just to simply accept an LSAT. They'll almost always, if you take a GRE, for example, some law schools accept the GRE, and some MBA programs also accept that. So in those instances, you would just take the GRE. But it will depend on the school, and we'd have to look and discuss that in an individual session. But the MBA program is not going to accept an LSAT.
Awesome. Okay, next question. We have a ton of these. I'm going to be mindful of time. Do you have a kind of preparation for LSAT? We absolutely do. Throughout the course of this webinar, I've dropped a ton of different resources in the chat, and I'm going to drop one in right now. So they vary from, law school sample resume templates to a law school admissions predictor to admissions checklist, even a LSAT pop quiz that was designed by one of our wonderful counselors, one of our wonderful panelists. So I'm going to drop that link in the chat for everyone to have as well. Please let me know that you see it. I'm going to mark it as a tip. Awesome. Someone says, can applying early admissions increase chance of acceptance?
Yes, it almost always will. Because early decision is binding. So they're going to really know, and they'll give you an early response too. Some schools have early decision too, I think. But early decision will always help your chances. Although it won't, like I said before, like these types of kind of +1 things like leadership and stuff like that, including early decision, they're not going to like make up for like a really poor GPA or a really poor LSAT score. So, but if you're competitive in those areas and you really know you want to go to that school, I would recommend doing Indeed. Sure.
Awesome. So we have a question. We have a ton of questions coming in about sort of timelines and how much time people should give themselves to prepare before applying to law schools and all of that. I'd love for you to speak on that, but I just want to make a note because we love our resources at Juris. We actually have a law school application timeline blog post. And what it actually does is it breaks down month by month what you should be doing, starting from March, April to, January and April of the next year, whether you're applying early decision or not. So I recommend you check that out as well.
Yeah, I would defer to that blog post, honestly. And the only caveat to that would be is if you don't know you want to go to law school, and I don't think people would be in this chat right now if they were like, thinking they wouldn't be going to applying for law school. So, but for me personally, I only knew towards the end of my undergraduate experience. So it was sort of like a tighter deadline. So if you know now, which you guys seem like you do, I would follow what Juris says in that blog post for sure.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So this was a great question from Gabriella. How do you format your personal statement to be one fits all if each school has their own requirements?
I think I would say
it's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in terms of like the length of the personal statement, like I said before, up to 3 pages or 2 to 4, like usually around 2 pages is going to be the generally accepted length. In terms of supplemental essays, it's going to be a different story, but we can definitely speak, when you sign up with a consultant, you can go through the specific questions that you may have about that.
Great. Is your personal statement different from a diversity statement?
Yeah, it is. And sometimes, because the diversity statement is a supplemental essay that only some schools ask for. And so that's not going to be the same thing.
So if they are doing a diversity statement, should they leave their personal statement more broad?
I would say it's a case by case. So you have to speak with a consultant on that to sort of dive deeper into what you mean by that in terms of like how the subject would be different. You don't want to just cut and paste, obviously. But I would say you don't need to necessarily hinder yourself in one way or the other because, you think because you have to mention this in the diversity statement that you can't mention it in the personal statement. At the end of the day, your personality and qualities that make you a diverse candidate go hand in hand. So there's going to be some degree of redundancy, but I think it's more about making sure that you're making different points about the similar or same subject matter in a way that makes the 2 essays different, but drawing on different qualities of who you are. And I know that's a very convoluted statement, but again, it's a case-by-case basis. And when you speak with a Juris consultant, they'll definitely dive deeper into how you can kind of balance those 2 essays and make sure that they bring out the best qualities of you.
Absolutely. So we have a couple questions in it, and I'm going to kind of combine them. So individuals who maybe haven't been in school, they're mature students, they haven't been in school in some X amount of time, or they've been out of the workforce for X amount of time. How do they go about getting letters of recommendation? So
if you've been out of school for like several years, I would say your letters of recommendation will be from your employers. And it'll be your manager, your supervisor, things like that. I had a classmate in my year. Sadly, she recently had passed away, but she was really inspiring. She spent I think 2 or 3 decades at the Los Angeles Times as an editor-in-chief, and she was in her 50s, and by the time she was a first-year law student. And so it's never too late to go to law school. It's never too late to change your career, and sometimes that can be super helpful because she did really well, and she did well in OCI, did the interviewing process well, performed really well in school, and asked really intelligent questions all the time. I was really impressed and amazed in all of her, really. So don't count yourself out if you are far removed from school. Sometimes that can be in your favor because you have that experience and you know how it works.
That's beautiful. This is a great question. Will admissions look at graduate GPA along with undergrad GPA?
Yeah, they'll look at both. And again, that's a case-by-case basis in terms of the school and how they'll evaluate it. I would say for graduate programs, since they're more So undergrad's more general because everyone takes like, you know, their required liberal arts classes, whereas a graduate degree is like specialized. So it will really depend on what your graduate degree was in and how relevant it is to what you want to do. And we can talk about the theme of your application and everything, and making sure that that's sort of its own unique factor. But they do evaluate those grades. I think they evaluate them in different ways, and the degree to which they are valued will depend on the program and the school that you're applying to. And we can discuss that one-on-one.
Great questions, ladies and gentlemen. So this is fantastic. Should you study for the LSAT and then application process, or application then study? And thank you, Gabriella, who actually replied to Danielle, but I think we're going to be taking a stab at that as well, at that question.
I think it depends on what you, I've seen it both ways. I've seen people take the LSAT before they start writing their application essay. I personally finished my application essay first so I could focus more on the LSAT and just focus on getting my score higher and higher as like my sole thing. I didn't want to worry about it. So I guess if you ask me personally, like, and this is like a personal preference, I would say your application done early because that's going to be the most like the thing that requires the most amount of time, because, you know, yes, assembling your materials, getting recommendations, writing the essay is going to take time, but studying for the LSAT and taking it and getting the score that you want, that could take, that's like a wild fact. That's like a wild card. You don't know if you're going to get the score you want the first time. And it's going to be really hard. It's going to take months to study for it. And that's going to be one of the biggest components of your application. So I would say it makes sense to me to get your application materials done or for the most part, like, you know, finished before you start studying, really. But if you're on a tight deadline, start studying, and then if you're really confident about your writing skills, then worry about the application afterwards. But I would do application first and then study if you have the time.
I just want to pop in and say we have such a wonderful community and this wonderful conversations happening in the chat. So thank you to everyone participating. And shout out to Nancy. She says, I'm 71, will be graduating in October with a BS in legal studies with a GPA of 3.95.
Wow.
Congratulations, Nancy. Can we drop a 1 in the chat for Nancy to congratulate her? That's fantastic. So mindful of time, I think we have time for one more question. Bruna asked us, can a high LSAT help offset a lower GPA? Awesome. Thanks for the ones. Good job, everyone. And again, congratulations, Nancy.
Yes, that will help. And again, I hate saying it, but it's just the truth. It depends on the school, because some schools will be more open to accepting like a split metric candidate. And by that, I mean someone with a low GPA, but like a really high LSAT score, or someone with a really high GPA and a really low LSAT score. I've seen both. I know people in my class at USC who had like really low LSAT scores, but they were valedictorian and they got into USC with a great scholarship. And they were like in the top of the class. And then I've seen people have really high LSAT scores and not perform that well in law school. So don't think that that's like dispositive of anything, but if you have a low GPA, it would definitely not hurt to really focus on getting like that really high LSAT score to offset it, for sure.
Fantastic. And you know what? I just missed something in the chat. Looks like Gabriella took her LSAT last Saturday, so congratulations to her as well. That's fantastic. We'd love to know how it went for you. Please drop us a note, or even email us. We'd love to hear how it went for you. So it looks like we are almost at the hour. I think I'd love to wrap up tonight's session. So thank you very much for to our wonderful audience for being so present and being so active. Jesse, thank you for your time. If you haven't done so, we encourage you to book a free consultation. We'd love to hear more from you, and we'd love to continue the conversation one-on-one.